on rats. And they found that as they increased the density of the rats turned to infanticide, suicide, and other very strange behavior not normally attributed to rats. I was at a meeting one time, and they were talking about planning and high density and all that sort of thing, and I asked them about the study of rats. And they said, oh, yeah, we're very familiar with those studies. But he said, this one planner says, but they were flawed. And I said, why were they flawed? He says, because they didn't provide the rats parks. And he was dead serious. And, excuse me, people, I understand what you're trying to do, and in some applications it works very well. If you can find a group of people that want to live, say, less than they are normally living now, and they want to get back to the rural lifestyle, your idea makes a lot of sense, but it wouldn't appeal to a large section of people because they've been conditioned to the American lifestyle. And the American lifestyle is essentially a fairly nice house, and maybe it's 1,500, maybe it's 2,000, maybe it's 2,500 square feet. And they collect stuff to put in all that.
That's right.
Square footage.
So my concept of self-sufficient family farms, 10 families living together, working together in a cooperative.
Yeah, it's a cooperative, or and by the way, cooperatives are not new by any stretch.
No, over there in Europe, they're really going big time.
Well, the early settlers of America essentially were those kinds of villages, where unfortunately, when they first came to Plymouth, in Maine or Massachusetts, I guess it was, they set these things up. And unfortunately, they didn't work because some of the people wouldn't work as long as the other people were working and providing the food. And so they went to an individual thing rather than a collective thing. But if you have, say, 10 people who are of the same mindset, and they all agree to chip in with the work that is necessary for agricultural production, for power, for water, that works really well. Unfortunately, people are individuals, and some know how to work hard, some want to work hard, and some others would rather sit on their couch and watch TV.
Well, I would, I sit at my chair here and work on my computer, and I'm not really wild about gardens, but I've had them, and I enjoy having them, and I enjoy the benefits from them. So it's really a matter of re-educating people, isn't it?
Well, it is, but how do you re-educate them out of an urban center that has been going on for 100 years or more, until you go back to the land? And then you'd run into the environmentalists and say, we can't have these people spreading out all over the land, and they'd pass rules and regulations to stop you from doing it.
Well, that's exactly what they do, and of course, that's the problem we face, this whole concept of digging up your backyard, putting in food, putting a windmill, or putting a solar on your roof, making your house actually bring you an income in while you're back in the garden working. But people tell me, oh, well, we can't do that. The zoning here, the neighborhood association, the legislation, the UN won't like that. That's what we are up against. And they've almost got to the point now that they outnumber us, because if you're talking about liberty and freedom, even the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, is trying to say you're potentially a terrorist. If you want to go back to the land, you're a terrorist.
That's right. Anybody who says that they don't agree with centralized government, anybody who is an individual and think that individual rights are sacrosanct and are willing to defend it in one way or in one form or another, they are now being labeled by Homeland Security. And this came through a study that was done by a local university, not a local university, but a major university, on a $12 million grant where they correlated crime and terror. In other words, terror acts. Well, everybody knows pretty much what crime is, but they would not identify in this entire report that I could find what a terror act is in terms of acts against a multiple group of citizens versus an act to rob a bank or to shoot somebody or something like that. And so they tried to make correlations. Well, guess where the correlations were? They were in the big cities. And the major urban centers like Los Angeles, New York, were the targets of not only the crime, the growing crime, but also acts of terror. Acts of terror are designed for intimidation. They are designed to injure or kill as many people as possible, but to get off that message that you better hunker down and you better behave yourself or you're going to get blown up. And the kind of terror that actually is going on, and many people know, like the Oklahoma City bombing, that was a terror act by an American. All right, but terror acts by
what if that was a terror act by the U.S. government, by the BATF, who had just been training a week before with car bombs at White Sands Missile Range around the corner from me? What if that was a government act trying to demonize the whole militia movement, which was growing rapidly with my help?
Well, look, is it a possibility? Yes. Is it likely? Probably not. I don't see the government is evil. And the government is only evil because it lusts after power. Power is the enemy. Whether these people who say that the United States was behind 9/11 and other conspiracies like that, I think are off base. And I think that the conspiracy theory that the United States government essentially fostered the Oklahoma City or perpetrated the Oklahoma City bombing, I think that's off base as well. By what purpose?
What purpose?
Would they kill? What purpose would they kill 167 Americans, or 3,000 in the case of the Twin Towers, of their own people, in order to further their power or to further some evil agenda? As I said, the government is definitely evil in its lust for power. But is it evil enough that it would clandestine kill its own people? I don't think we've reached that point yet.
Well, in the Soviet Union, they killed 10 million farmers.
I know. In
Ukraine.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of the country.
Ukraine. It was in the Ukraine. But,
in the Ukraine, right.
You know, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, everything he's describing is happening now. And I want to talk about that. I mentioned Ayn Rand, because this is the average people are starting to feel this. When the government can come in your backyard to inspect your tomatoes, you know, come on, folks. And I've said a long time ago, if a man with a badge can walk up to you and say, "What's that in your pocket, son? Smells like marijuana. I'm gonna have to take you down to the station. We're gonna have to fine you $500. We're gonna have to put you in jail overnight." Yeah, well, then you're in a police state.
We are in a police state. I don't think anybody in your audience should be lulled into that this is America and we have freedom and all that sort of thing. Yeah, we have freedom, the freedom they allow us to have. There's in Los Angeles County, to control their rural areas, they have set up what they call a nuisance abatement team. Maybe I said this on the last time I was on your program. The nuisance abatement team is a SWAT team with tinted windshield SUVs, fully armed with a flak vest and the whole works. And if you don't respond to an order by the county to abate something they say you're a violation of, this nuisance abatement team will show up on your property, jump out of their cars with guns drawn, and haul you off to court or to jail, because they have criminalized land use violations, where before they were civil violations. Now they are criminal violations. With a criminal violation, they can get a warrant to search your property, search your house. With a civil violation, they can't get a warrant. So the cities and the counties have now been converting what were civil violations of a land use code to criminal violations. Therefore, they criminalize you, like the guy said earlier in his program, that ended up in jail for 150 days for cleaning out a ditch on his rural property. And that's what's going on. We are in a police state, and I don't think anybody should be lulled into the belief that we are not a police state.
We have now. I've made the statement before that the war on terror, when all this started after 9/11, I said the war on terror is a war against anyone, anywhere in the world that doesn't want to go along with one world banking. Every country that we've attacked didn't have a central bank. Venezuela doesn't have a central bank. They aren't part of the international bankers that Henry Ford warned us about.
Yeah. Look, the story of central banking goes back well over 1,000 years. And the central bankers are essentially the ones who originally made money by private enterprise and then found out that they could loan their reserve capital to governments and make an absolutely assured rate of return with a good interest rate. And they were doing it in very large numbers, in millions, and now we're in billions, and sometimes trillions of dollars. And they take a small percentage, maybe it's 0.5%, maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 2%. Well, you take 2% of $1 trillion, it's a huge number. And that gives them all kinds of power that the governments essentially have fallen into the trap of being the borrower from the lender, and the borrower is always subservient to the lender.
Didn't the Bible tell us that? You know, this is pretty incredible. How this has been going on. I've made the statement before. As a matter of fact, I've got a film out called "There's No Such Thing as a New World Order." Because the money changers Jesus ran out of the temple are still with us. They just changed the name of the temple. They call it the Federal Reserve now, or the Bank of England.
And it's incestuous, Clay. I mean, all the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Morgans, they're all in this as a family. And there have been several families throughout the last 1,000, 1,500 years that fall into this category of central bankers that have gotten just filthy rich by loaning money to governments. Since the governments have the power to tax, their loans are absolutely secure. And so, as I said just a few minutes ago, the borrower is always subservient to the lender. Just borrow money to buy a house, and you'll find out just how subservient you are to that lender. Screw up, don't make your payments, and your house will be taken from you. So control can be by a number of mechanisms. It can either be by force, by violence, or it can be by being subservient to somebody because you relied on them to get something. So when you rely on government to get something for you, you become subservient to that government. And we now, most of us there's so many of us that have some form of income, some form of resource coming from the government. And we're pawns. We're stuck. And you won't bite the hand that feeds you. If you're sitting in an inner city right now and you're living off of subsistence, you're going to vote for the guys that continue that subsistence, and you aren't going to vote for the guy that says, hey, we've been paying you too much money, we got to cut back. Greece is finding that out right now, and then violence is all over the place because of it. Oh, and by the way, you were talking about property, and I have to get this in somewhere on our program, and that is your property line, and this is especially for rural landowners, your property line is your first line of defense. And as you said earlier, government agents come on your property willy-nilly without asking you or anything else. They just come in there and start taking pictures and gathering evidence or whatever they want to do, or check your tomatoes.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Now, my plan for Liberty Villagers. I don't go out, and I'm not handy. I can't build anything. I can't fix a car. I can't change a transmission or something. I can't do that. So you trade labor. I mean, and the way I see this working is the same way that Ithaca, New York did. You heard of Ithaca Hours?
I've heard of Ithaca, but I haven't heard of that.
Ithaca Hours was a system that they used in the town to issue their own money. You work for an hour, you got 10 Ithaca hours. And that if you set up these farms, the property, you only need 5 acres, or an acre. Let's say an acre. You can put 10 people together to work to grow the crops, work building products, becoming more self-sufficient, like we've done. I mean, if they could, if the Taiwanese can build a computer in a shack back there to sell to America, we ought to be able to do that, shouldn't we?
Of course.
And if you had these little villages up with one in the barn there, you're building solar units or wind generators to sell to your neighbors, and you're growing your own crops, you're pretty much free. And we've never been tyranny free on this planet, and never will be unless they get their way, and it's all your regulated robot. A good worker ant, right?
Yeah. But the problem that you run into, Clay, is the fact that the mindset, the world mindset now, is based on 2 things. One, man is a detriment to the earth and he must be regulated. 2, there's a lot of poor people on the earth, and therefore we have to redistribute the wealth of the earth in order to lift the poor people up. Those are the 2 mindsets that are coming out of the United Nations and the world elite to control the entire world population. If they take all of our wealth and resources in America and redistribute it, we've got nothing. We've got no power. We have no military because we couldn't afford our military. We would lose our sovereignty. We would be merged into the world government. And the only thing that's going to save this planet right now and the people in it is America and America's mindset of freedom. But so much of that mindset has been brainwashed out of them in the schools and the colleges, the messages from the government. That don't be an individual, be part of the collective.
That's right. They don't call it programming for nothing, and I don't call it the public school system. I call it the public fool system. You're trained. You're not trained to think. You're trained. You're indoctrinated to be a good sort of punch that time clock at 8 o'clock in the morning, check out at 5, get drunk and watch TV.
Well, you saw what I wrote in that article about the Agenda 21 infiltrating the government here in Washington State. And the words that are used are all these collective words. The social equity, social justice, environmental, Earth Charter, all of these are propaganda words. I was in 2 schools recently. On the back of the room, it said, becoming a good global citizen. Now, where do you suppose that comes from? This whole globalization been started in the 1st grade. I saw it when my kids were in school 10 years ago. Yeah,
it was popping up all over the place.
Absolutely, and it's infiltrating, and this started not only out of the United Nations, but it also started when the U.S. government created the Department of Education. That then, the Department of Education had the power to set the curriculum nationwide and to control the curriculum by the distribution of money. And you talk to any of these kids today, they believe in global warming, they believe in the collective thing, they believe in multiculturalism, they believe in multiple languages. I mean, it is, from a guy as old as I am, at 75, looking at this stuff makes me want to throw up. And I got grandchildren that are going through the system right now. Now they're in private schools because their parents have at least seen the light, but even the private schools are pushing some of this crap. Pardon me. Anyhow, what I was about to say before you interrupted me is that your property line is your first line of defense. And if you don't protect it with very powerful no trespassing sign, then the government agents, local, state, or federal, will feel fully empowered to come on your property. And the law gives anybody who has a no trespassing sign with strong language on it deference, because if a government agent comes on and collects evidence against you after having crossed over a powerful no trespassing sign like we have on our website, that evidence can be ruled inadmissible in an administrative proceeding or in a court proceeding. And a lot of people don't know this. So you got a guy wandering around on your property taking pictures. If he crossed over a powerful no trespassing sign, one especially that excludes government agents, then that evidence becomes worthless. They can't use it.
And by the way, that no trespassing sign is displayed and linked on Free American website.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Clay.
I appreciate what you're doing. You know, but and again, I agree with what you're saying about the property line, because that's the old thing. I mean, Liberty Villages was planned to have veterans living there, protecting the place, because I think it's going to get down to that. When the communists took over in Africa, in South Africa, the first thing they did was attack the individual family farms and kill the families that were living there.
You bet. Because that is where freedom and individuality is spawned. In the big cities, they are essentially wards of the city. All the city has to do is turn off the water, turn off the power, shut down the roads or the garbage, and all of a sudden their nice little society comes unglued, and they will essentially capitulate to a force to get their water and their electricity back, or their roads back, or their garbage collection back. They are literally under the thumb of a central government, with either within the city itself, or within the state, or within the central federal government. So your idea of independence on the farm in some form or another, especially for veterans, I think that's a great idea.
Well, it's not just veterans, it's children too. You got some homeless children, send them over. We'll teach them how to grow food. We'll teach them how to care for animals, and you know, of course, and we'll have some veterans there to defend them if the government tries to accuse us of child labor.
By the way, I was interested in this Outward Bound program, where they take inner city kids and they put them out in the country to survive, up in the mountains or wherever, in the desert. And it's a 3-week program. And I was talking to this lady about the program. I thought this was really great. And she said, well, it is really great for 3 weeks. And then they send these kids back to the same environment they came out of, which they lose everything they learned in the 3 weeks up in the mountains. And so if you can't get them out of the environment, you can't help them. And your idea of taking and putting kids out on the farm like that, again, where they work, where they get the idea that hard work is a worthwhile endeavor because they get something back for it, like food, I mean, something to eat.
Well, if we do the Liberty Village concept, and look, you got a 100-acre farm, would you donate 5 acres to a profit-making little venture And would you agree to train these selected people, not just random, we're talking about people filing an application, credit checks, the whole bit. Would you take these people and teach them how to run a farm or a ranch? These veterans here, would you provide housing and food for these veterans in return for how much work they put in?
I think that there are some people who own large chunks of land that might do something like that. I would say that the lion's share of them would not want any part of it for fear of their own safety, for fear of, well, what are they getting into? And a lot of it depends on how well the people behave in that area, how, if you got kids, how they are disciplined and controlled, because kids can get out of hand, as you well know.
Yes, sir.
And so without strong oversight and what do they call these people that oversee kids?
Guardians?
Take them on trips, you know. I'm trying to come up with a word that 75 words escape me, you know. Well, anyhow, well, we covered a lot of territory.
Yes, we have, and let's give out your information. It's all linked on the website, and I appreciate if you send out emails, tell people about this show. It is about getting information. It's also about working together. Maybe my solution ain't right for everybody, but this whole concept of being self-sufficient and independent is what this country was all about. That's what
we started on. Individuality and individual freedom. And the right to do whatever you wanted to do within your capabilities, as long as it didn't hurt anybody else. And we're so far away from that now that it's hard to believe. As I said, I got grandchildren, and they're brainwashed. Not to mention the fact they're spoiled. They don't even know what work is.
No, and you know, again, they don't call it programming for nothing. Now, folks, let me tell you. I'm gonna come right out here. This video is going up on YouTube. We probably will do some editing. Now we've got the capabilities to do that, to make a little bit better films up for YouTube.
Sure.
And you need to tell people about this. You need to tell people about the show. Now, I've also written 3 books. One of those books, Mystery Babylon, is a whole history of the last 2,000 years of tyranny, and especially concentrating on the last 40 years of the whole freedom movement in America. Now, I believe we're entering a real critical time. I think it's really time for people to wake up. We got to start working together. You know, the ideas we have, the technology we have solar units, solar generators available on my site. We have low-cost structures available on my site. You can put it, I don't care whether you live with me. I don't necessarily want anybody to live with me, but we've got 40 acres in Texas that we will be developing Liberty Villages on.
Yeah, good for you.
And this we're doing this in conjunction with a company called Tiny Texas Houses. They got 40 acres on I-40, and they sell these half-size houses that are as much as I would need to live in, as much as a family would need to live in, and we've got 40 acres right there on I-10 to do it right.
Okay.
So we're looking for people that want to get away from it, that got enough money. I mean, we're talking about a little bit of an investment here, but it's an investment you can pick up and move if you want to go somewhere. You can have it moved, for God's sake.
Or computer.
All right.
Radio.com.
Hang on just a second. All right, we're almost done here. And Ron, tell us again about your website and where we can go.
That's www.narlo, that's N as in Nancy, ARLO.org, and we represent the National Association of Rural Landowners.
All right.
You are a
Thank you for being on with me here.
A conspiracy nut. That's what you are.
Ron Ewart.